There was a winter morning many years ago when I sat across from a man who had built one of the greatest fortunes the world had ever known. The fire in his study had burned low, and the steam from our coffee curled upward into the cold air like a thin, patient prayer. He looked at me with those unblinking eyes that had measured more men than I could count, and he said something I have never forgotten. He said that every great achievement he had ever witnessed in another human being could be traced, with almost mathematical precision, back to the first hour of that person's day. Not their education, not their inheritance, not their luck. The first hour. And in that single sentence, he handed me one of the most disturbing keys I would ever possess. Disturbing because it was so simple and because so few would ever pick it up. I want you to understand something before we continue. The morning is not a time of day. The morning is a doorway. And every human being on this earth walks through that doorway twice. Once in their body, when their eyes open and their feet meet the floor, and a second time in their mind, when the first true thought of the day is born. Most people are entirely unconscious of this second crossing. They believe they have woken up, but in truth, only their flesh has stirred. Their mind has been picked up where it was left the night before, soaked in the same anxieties, the same regrets, the same noise of yesterday. And so they begin their day not as architects, but as tenants in a house built by their own neglected thoughts. But the most surprising part comes only now, because the truth I learned over 40 years of studying the lives of 500 extraordinary men and women was this: the great achievers of this earth did not become great in the boardroom, nor on the battlefield, nor in the laboratory. They became great in the silent, sacred minutes between the moment their eyes opened and the moment the world began to demand things of them. That narrow corridor of time, no longer than the burning of a single candle, was where their destinies were forged. And what they did in that corridor was not what you have been told. You see, there is a law that operates upon the human mind from the instant of waking. A law as faithful and as merciless as gravity. The mind, in the first moments of consciousness, is in a state remarkably similar to a freshly tilled field. It is open, it is receptive, it is unguarded. Whatever seed is planted in that field, whether by your own hand or by the careless hand of the world, will take root and grow into the harvest of your day. And the harvest of your days, my friend, is the harvest of your life. There is no escape from this arithmetic. Now consider what most men and women plant in that sacred field. They reach, before their feet have even touched the floor, for a small glowing rectangle. Into their unguarded mind, they pour the panic of strangers, the outrage of the marketplace, the petty quarrels of distant cities, the manufactured urgencies of those who profit from a confused public. They plant fear, they plant comparison, they plant scattered desire, and then they wonder, by evening, why their hearts are heavy, why their thoughts feel borrowed, why their lives feel like something that is happening to them rather than something they are creating. They have surrendered the most fertile hour of their existence to forces that do not love them. What Hill said about this subject is deeply unsettling, and I will say it to you plainly. He said that the man who does not govern his first hour will be governed by it for the rest of his life. He will rise each day a stranger to his own purpose. He will spend his afternoons trying to repair what his morning has broken. He will go to bed exhausted from a battle he never chose to fight. And worst of all, he will come to believe that this is simply the nature of life, when in truth it is only the nature of a life that has not been claimed. I want to take you now into the studies of men whose names you know, men whose photographs hang in halls of greatness, and I want to show you what they did in the silent corridor of their morning, because the pattern is too consistent to be coincidence. It is, in fact, a law in disguise. There was Andrew Carnegie, the man who once held more steel in his hands than the kings of Europe held land. Carnegie rose early, but he did not rise into action. He rose into thought. Before he spoke to a single soul, before he opened a single ledger, he sat in stillness with what he called his definite chief aim. He had written it on a card. He had memorized it. And every morning, before the world could place its requests upon him, he placed his own request upon himself. He reminded himself in the quiet of who he had decided to become. And then, only then, did he allow the day to begin. There was Thomas Edison, who failed 10,000 times in pursuit of a single filament of light. Do you imagine that such persistence was the product of a chaotic mind? It was not. Edison rose, sat at his desk, and entered what he called his thought sessions before any other activity. He did not check messages. He did not consume the opinions of others. He communed in solitude with the problem he had vowed to solve. He fed his subconscious mind the question and let the answer rise as the day unfolded. The lamp that lit the modern world was lit first in the morning silence of a single man's mind. There was Benjamin Franklin, who at the age of 20 had already designed a morning ritual so precise that it shaped not only his own life, but the conscience of a young republic. He asked himself a question each morning that I want you to feel the weight of. He asked himself, what good shall I do this day? Not what shall I get, not what shall I avoid, what shall I give, what shall I build, what shall I become? And by asking that question before the day asked its questions of him, he turned every morning into a small act of authorship. The detail most people overlook is hidden right here. These men did not have more time than you. They did not have fewer obligations. They did not live in a quieter age. Carnegie's mornings were besieged by telegrams and visitors. Edison's by financial pressures that would have crushed a lesser nervous system. Franklin's by political storms that shook continents. And yet each of them carved out a corridor of stillness at the start of the day, because they understood something that has been forgotten in our time. They understood that the morning is not where you find time. The morning is where you make time. And the man who does not make time at the start of the day will spend the rest of the day being made by it. Here begins the darkest game of the subconscious mind. And you must follow me carefully now, because what I am about to describe is the very mechanism by which most lives are quietly lost. The subconscious mind, that vast and obedient servant which Hill spent decades studying, does not distinguish between the thoughts you choose and the thoughts you accept. It does not care whether a seed was planted by your own hand or fell from the careless wagon of the world passing by. It accepts, it germinates, it grows. And the law of autosuggestion teaches us that whatever idea is impressed upon the subconscious with feeling and repetition will, in time, externalize itself in your circumstances. This is not mysticism, it is mental physics. Every life you see around you is the visible harvest of an invisible planting. Every fortune, every failure, every quiet desperation, every radiant peace. Now, when does the subconscious mind do its deepest planting? It plants in the moments of what the old psychologists called the hypnagogic state, the borderland between sleep and waking. In those first minutes of the morning, the rational, critical, gatekeeping part of the mind has not yet fully come online. The doors of the inner kingdom are open. Whatever crosses the threshold in those minutes does not knock politely. It walks straight to the throne, and it sits there, and it begins to rule. This is why the man who reaches for the news before he reaches for his own thoughts has, without knowing it, surrendered his throne to strangers. This is why the woman who scrolls through the curated lives of others before she has remembered her own purpose finds herself by noon feeling smaller than she truly is. This is why the worker who begins his day with grievance ends his day with exhaustion. The subconscious has been told what to grow, and it has obeyed. It always obeys. That is its terrifying loyalty and its sacred gift. So what, then, did Hill counsel? What did the men of great achievement actually do in those first minutes that you and I might do also? I will give it to you now, not as a formula, but as a path. A path you may walk in your own way, at your own pace, in the privacy of your own awakening. The first thing they did was to remain for a few moments in stillness. They did not leap. They did not reach. They did not scroll. They simply rested in the awareness of being alive, alive on a morning that not every man who went to bed last night was given. There is a power in this that the modern world has forgotten. Gratitude is not a sentimental emotion. Gratitude is a mental posture, and it is the only posture from which the subconscious mind willingly accepts new instructions. A bitter mind plants nothing. A grateful mind plants gardens. The second thing they did was to remember their definite chief aim. Hill placed this principle at the very center of his philosophy, and not by accident. He had observed that no man rises higher than the clarity of his purpose. The world is full of capable people who are drifting, and drifting is the most expensive habit a human being can possess. So in the morning, before the currents of the day pulled them in 100 directions, the great achievers reminded themselves where they were sailing. They spoke their purpose. Some wrote it. Some recited it. Some simply held it in the silence of their hearts, but they did it daily, without negotiation. The third thing they did was to feed the subconscious a clear and confident image of themselves already in possession of that aim. This is the practice Hill called autosuggestion, and it is older than any school of psychology. The ancients knew it. The mystics knew it. The merchants of Florence knew it. You are not what you wish to be. You are not what you fear you are. You are what your subconscious has been repeatedly told you are. And the morning is when that telling carries the most weight, when you see yourself in the inner eye as the man or woman who has already crossed the threshold of your dream. When you feel it, not merely think it, you are issuing instructions to a force inside you that does not know how to disobey. The fourth thing they did, and this is the part most often forgotten, was to commit the day to a single act of forward motion, not a list of 20 tasks, not a frantic agenda, one act, one movement, one stone placed upon the cathedral of their purpose, because the great achievers understood that a life is built not by heroic surges, but by the patient laying of one stone each morning, for 10,000 mornings. And the man who lays one stone each day, while others are arguing about the architecture, will one day stand before a cathedral. The fifth thing they did, and now I am giving you something rare, something the surface books do not say, was to spend a moment in what Hill called communion with infinite intelligence. Whether you call it the universal mind, the higher self, the soul, or simply the deep current of life, makes little difference. The act is the same. They opened for a moment to a wisdom larger than their own. They asked, they listened, they allowed the small self to be quiet so that the larger self might speak. And in that listening, ideas came, solutions came, courage came. Things came that the planning mind alone could never have summoned. Because the planning mind, my friend, is a fine servant but a poor master. There is something in you wiser than your strategies, and the morning is when it is most willing to be heard. What the lives of great achievers have been trying to tell us for centuries is something our age finds almost unbearable to hear. They have been telling us that the external life is a mirror, and what stands before the mirror in the morning is what the mirror will show by evening. If you stand before it as a hurried man, you will see a hurried life. If you stand before it as a fearful man, you will see a life shaped by your fears. But if you stand before it as a man of purpose, of gratitude, of clear inner vision, you will in time see a life that bears the unmistakable fingerprints of those qualities. The mirror does not lie, it cannot lie, it is only obedient. Now I must speak to you about the spirit of our age, because I would be a poor mentor if I pretended you live in the world Carnegie lived in. You do not. You live in an age of unprecedented assault upon the morning hour. There has never in the history of the human race been a more sophisticated machinery aimed at capturing your first waking thoughts. Billions of dollars have been spent to ensure that the moment you open your eyes, your attention is delivered to someone else's purpose. This is not paranoia. This is the simple architecture of the modern attention economy, and it is the single greatest spiritual challenge of our generation. Modern man has lost the compass of his inner purpose, but not the need for it. He feels the need. He feels it as a vague restlessness, a low-grade anxiety, a sense that something important is being missed, but he cannot name what. He tries to fill that absence with consumption, of news, of opinions, of entertainment, of the curated lives of strangers. But the absence cannot be filled from outside, because the absence is the unfilled chair of his own definite purpose at the head of his own inner table. Until that chair is filled, every morning will feel like an arrival into someone else's house. I have watched with no small concern what has happened to the morning in the last generation. I have watched it shrink. I have watched it become the most trafficked piece of real estate in the human mind, with every advertiser, every algorithm, every notification competing for the first square inch of your awareness. And I have watched the cost of this surrender mount year by year, in the form of nervous disorders the ancients had no name for, in the form of restless souls who own everything and possess nothing, in the form of capable men and women who feel by the age of 40 that they have somehow missed the life they were meant to live. They have not missed it through any single grand failure. They have missed it through 10,000 small mornings handed away to forces that did not love them and never could. There is a great cost to all this, but there is also a great opportunity, and I want you to feel it. Because in an age when nearly everyone has forgotten the morning, the man or woman who remembers it has gained an advantage that no fortune can buy. While others are reactive, you are intentional. While others are scattered, you are focused. While others are exhausted by noon, you are still drawing from a deep well. This is not a small thing. In a marketplace of distracted minds, the focused mind is a king walking among sleepwalkers. And kingship in this sense is not granted by birth or by office. It is granted by the simple daily act of governing your own mind before the world attempts to govern it for you. The real turning point begins here, and I want you to hear this with the part of you that has been quiet for too long. The reclamation of your life begins with the reclamation of your morning, not because the morning is magical, but because the morning is foundational. You cannot build a temple on shifting sand, and you cannot build a magnificent life on a morning surrendered to the noise of the world. Reclaim those first 30 minutes, even those first 10, and you have begun to reclaim everything. Lose them day after day, year after year, and you will arrive at the end of your life wondering where it went. It went, my friend, into the mornings you did not own. I want you to consider, just for a moment, the paradox at the heart of this teaching, because every truth worth knowing contains a paradox, and this one is no exception. The paradox is this: the morning ritual is not about doing more. It is about doing less, with infinitely more intention. The man who wakes and immediately begins to do has already lost the morning. The man who wakes and first learns to be has already won the day before it has begun. We have been told in this anxious age that productivity is the highest virtue, but productivity without direction is only the rapid expenditure of a life. And direction is something that comes from stillness, not from speed. Consider also the paradox of effort. The morning ritual feels, to the beginner, like one more burden, one more thing to add to an already overburdened life. And yet those who have practiced it for any length of time will tell you the opposite. They will tell you that the morning ritual is the only thing that has made the rest of the day bearable. It is not an addition to the load. It is the foundation that allows the load to be carried without crushing the one who carries it. The man who does not have a morning ritual is not free of effort. He is simply spending his effort in 1,000 reactive directions all day long. The man with a morning ritual has gathered that effort into a single focused stream, and a focused stream, as every engineer knows, can move mountains that scattered water cannot even reach. There is one more paradox I must place before you, and it is perhaps the deepest of them all. It is this: the morning practice will not change your life. You will change your life. The morning practice is only the place where you meet yourself with enough quiet and enough honesty to remember who you have decided to be. The change does not come from the practice. The change comes from the meeting. And the meeting is only possible because the practice has built a room in which it can occur. Without that room, you and your true self will pass each other in the hallway of every day, like two strangers in a crowded train station, and you will arrive at the end of your life never having truly been introduced. Now, I want to give you something practical because it would be unfair to take you this deep into the philosophy and leave you without a path. So here, in the simplest form I can offer, is the morning that the great achievers lived, translated into the language of your modern day. When your eyes open, do not move for 1 full minute. Simply lie there and feel the breath entering and leaving your body. Acknowledge that you have been given another day, a gift that no human being has ever truly earned. Let gratitude be the first guest in the house of your mind, before any other guest is allowed through the door. When you rise, do not reach for any device, not yet. The world will wait. It has waited for you for centuries. It will wait another half an hour. Move to a quiet place, a chair, a window, a corner of your room that you have made sacred by simply deciding it is sacred. Sit, breathe. Let the mind settle the way silt settles in still water. Then speak to yourself the definite chief aim of your life. If you have not yet defined it, begin by asking, what is the one thing I have come into this life to build, to give, to become? Do not rush this question. It may take weeks to answer it truly, but begin asking. The asking itself is the beginning of the answering. When you have your aim, hold it before your inner eye and see yourself already in possession of it, not striving for it, already living it. Feel what that man, that woman would feel in the body. Feel the calm, feel the quiet certainty, feel the gratitude of arrival. The subconscious mind responds to feeling more than to thought, and what is felt vividly in the morning will be sought silently all day. Then ask the larger wisdom, call it whatever name your soul prefers, to guide you through this day. Ask for the one act, the one decision, the one stone you must place today. And listen, do not strain, do not demand. Listen the way a man listens to a distant bell. The answer will come, sometimes immediately, sometimes hours later, but it will come. Finally, before you step into the river of the day, write down the one act you have been given, just one. Place it on a card or in the margin of your journal and carry it with you. That single act, performed with full attention, is worth more than 100 frantic tasks. It is the stone of the cathedral, and 10,000 stones, laid one at a time, build something that outlasts the man who laid them. This is the morning. This is the doorway. This is the corridor in which destinies are still, even now, being forged by those who have remembered the old wisdom. But I must close with the question that has been waiting beneath this entire conversation, the question that the great achievers ask themselves on every morning of their lives, the question I now place into your hands. It is not a comfortable question. It is not meant to be. The truths that change a life are rarely comfortable, and the comfortable ones rarely change anything. The question is this: when was the last time you gave the first hour of your day to the man or woman you have decided to become? Not to the one you have been, not to the one the world expects, to the one waiting patiently behind the door of your own unlived life. He is there. She is there. They have been waiting longer than you know, and they will wait with infinite patience until the morning you finally choose to open the door. The first hour is the door. The morning is the key. And the choice has always been and will always be entirely your own. Tomorrow will come, as it has come without fail for every morning of your life. The only question is whether you will meet it as a tenant or as the architect. The mirror is waiting. The field is open. The seed is in your hand. What will you plant?